So that just shows that there's a need for raising the status. So that was his goal. And to get there, once we had the roadmap that was established, we had to commit to it. So commitment was the second thing that was quite important, and commitment that goes with, of course, advocacy, a better advocacy. And when you know you have a great advocacy is when you have results, and that's where we got some results after 1 year of mandate with, I would say, 3 or 4 major achievements. Number one is the joint statement of the 3 presidencies of the COPs. COPs 27 at the time, COP 20 climate, COP 15 biodiversity, and of course COP 15 desertification. And this was a very important strategic objective during COP 15 in Abidjan as an expectation. And another thing was the desertification fresk. Desertification fresk, for those of you who don't know what it is a sister fresk to the climate fresk. We noticed that there was no fresk for the desertification issue, the land degradation issues. So we decided to, with the private sector, to introduce that. But it's important to say that this desertification fresk is the reflection of 4 major, not criteria, but 4 major pillars of UNCCD decisions that were taken in Abidjan. The youth, gender, innovation, and of course, well, the 4th one, I'm missing the 4th one, but okay. Again, it's 4 of them, and it will come back, of course. But what the point is that the discussion fresk is a card game for sensitization, and of course to bring more awareness. And the promoters of that game, the 4th one is the financial aspect. Yes. Bringing the private sector to finance projects. So it's come back. And yes, so we got the private sector to finance the project. That's an achievement. It shows the commitment of the private sector. The idea came from the private sector, and they needed institutional support, which we gave them with the COP15 presidency. And the gender aspect, you have to know that the ambassadors of the fresk are mostly women, and the coordinator of the fresk is a woman. So, as you can see, we have those pillars all together. Another achievement has been the raising of the awareness. Like Excellency just said, there's a lack of it. If today you type COP15 desertification, you will see there is a rise in awareness. On the communication side, you will find more articles on it. You will find, especially on the presidency side. So that's basically what I can tell you in terms of achievements. I will not go into the figures in terms of concrete results related to the UNCCD. I think it's for the Secretariat to give you that. But another thing that was achieved, it was the implementation of the working groups, intergovernmental working groups, one on drought and one on the follow-up of the implementation of the convention. Thank you.
And what did the working groups do? Because we always hear, study groups, working groups, research groups. What actually did they do?
Yeah, well, they went through data, they collected data, and they make strong recommendations. And those recommendations, since they're still working at it, I cannot share them with you right now, but they will be translated into strong decisions to be adopted during COP16.
I'm going to push you one more time, only because that is my job, and that is what people would be asking anyway. So those recommendations haven't been implemented yet? Not yet?
Some have, but not all of them.
Okay.
The most of them should be, should be implemented after COP16.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much.
But to just give you an example of what has been implemented, like I said, if you take the COP presidency on its side, we are managing with a small project that will become big very soon, let's hope, is the desertification fresk, bringing people together, bringing the private sector with the public together to get to somewhere. Yeah.
One more question.
Yeah. Please.
People say, you know, bringing the public along, as if it's some major achievement. Why weren't the public involved in the first place? Can you answer something like that? Because they're the ones that are doing it, that are living it. For example, why weren't the farmers, you know, brought along? What have you learnt?
It's difficult to say, but I must say that regarding the presidency itself, like I said, it really is a matter of charisma. It's a matter of determination. It's a matter of, those are the foundations, you know. If you want things to move forward, if you want to bring change, you have to be committed, fully committed, you know. And I think that's maybe one of the reasons why you haven't had too many people, you know, aware of that, maybe. Like you said, the farmers, maybe, and because they need to have, you know, leaders ahead to tell them, look, this is what we should be doing. This is where we should be going. Come with us. You are the answer. And again, the people are the answer. The youth is the answer, is the solution. We are not the solution, but we need people.
Mr. Francois, you can relax now. Okay. So you heard there about a joint, an agreement to essentially bring the three COPs together. I tweeted that or X'd that, I don't know what you say these days, but I X'd it. And I had a lot of private messages from people within my industry who didn't want to admit that they didn't know, saying, what do you mean, the three COPs? You're at the COP. They did not know that there were, and I keep saying this, and I'm sure people who've been with me in sessions, the public do not know that there are three COPs. It's as simple as that. And I think once you can break that barrier, you really do start to break through in terms of communicating. Because even a lot of statements that come out, it just, you know, they brush it aside. All they think about is COP, the next one. You know, they don't think about the others that are doing amazing work and are essential. So that's just an insight from the other side. Ms. Barbosa, three COPs coming together, what would that mean for you? What would that mean for you? I mean, you work obviously in a very unique environment. The biodiversity is so rich. It's so well documented what is taking place in Brazil, what has taken place. What have you seen? What is ReGreen all about? And what will the three COPs working together do for Brazil?
So first of all, thank you so much for the invitation. It's my second time here at G20, so I'm pretty honored to be here. So first, I want to talk a little bit about ReGreen, because just for everyone to understand where I'm coming from. So ReGreen is a Brazilian company, and we are working in Brazil to do restoration of degraded land. But we are doing so in a way that we can have a profitable activity. So our challenge there is using the existing financial mechanisms and trying to actually do restoration large scale and actually be able to return to our investors with some kind of return. So we are a for-profit company, and I think that's our first challenge in how we actually get scale up and do land restoration. We're mostly working on pasture, so we're working in the Amazon and the Atlantic rainforest, working for the pasture for cattle raising. And I think it's important to say that our first way of financing the activities that we're relying on are carbon credits, which I think has a lot to do with, like, the existing financial mechanisms are pretty much related to this COP, right? Like, we're talking much more about carbon credits than we're talking about other types of financial flows related to other type of nature-related indicators. So I think just to mention where we're coming from. I think that and then I will give you like another anecdote. So when I started working with restoration, I'm a lawyer, so I actually started working with restoration like 2 years ago when I joined the company. And it's interesting to say that the thing you just mentioned about like how the rankings of the COPs are implemented. So I first was asked about, so what's going to be your strategy for COP27, like last year in Egypt? Then we started talking about the COP of biodiversity. But I was never, like, that's the first time I've been asked about the COP of desertification. Not that I didn't know about it, but it's just a thing that in the corporate world, people don't talk that much about desertification. So I think that's just one thing that is interesting, and I'm just repeating all my colleagues here that we really need to raise awareness, But on the other hand, we really need to be very cautious on how we're actually going to talk about the joint COPs and work through, like, find transversal activities like restoration. Restoration is something that can work for biodiversity, it can work for climate, and it can work to tackle and the challenge of desertification itself. So we have to find those transversal activities, but also try to create like those financial mechanisms that are kind of addressing the three issues at once. Because if we can bring in like new discussions to the table, it gets very hard to the market to understand. That's my issue, for example, with biodiversity credits. I totally believe, and it's essential to find ways to actually be able to have a financial returns on biodiversity credits, but we're not even done with the carbon credits yet. So it's more about like how can we implement, and if we can implement carbon credits, looking at those other perspectives and all the other variables, and be able to have a more robust mechanisms. That's super important, because in the end of the day, the way I'm gonna be, and activities and projects like Regreen are gonna be viable, it's through financial mechanisms. And the government, of course, like we need public policy, and that's a very important thing. So when I'm talking about like the three COPs, and then to the extent that the climate crisis is increasing, the desertification crisis is increasing, and biodiversity crises are increasing, like we really need to take this moment to find a robust mechanism that could all actually address all those three crises, and in a very, very efficient way. Like we don't have time to waste. Like we need scale, we need speed. So we actually need to have all those efforts together towards finding financial mechanism. And when I'm talking about finance, I'm just, of course, like public policy is important, social participation is important. I'm just saying, like from the financial perspective, just because I think that's kind of a first way to drive and actually mobilize all the other resources towards going to the first, like a common ground.
I'm just going to stay with you, Ms. Barbosa, because I know you have to leave us early. So I'd just like to get a little bit more information from yourself. Obviously, the Brazilian rainforest is so well documented, and the issue of land degradation, what it does to the soil, and the loss of biomass, of course. We know that it's all about restoring balance. We also know that humans will not stop converting land. I mean, essentially, that's what we would need to do to conserve our land. What, in your opinion, needs to happen next? Is the current mandate, for example, that we have heard from the current UNCCD presidency, is it still fit for purpose for an area like Brazil? Localize it for us, please.
So I think I can talk a little bit about the Amazon, but I also want to talk about other biomes, because I think that's that when it comes to a country like Brazil, where like everybody relates Brazil to the rainforest, there is an issue that you stop having public policy and financial resources towards other biomes, and other biomes have people, and the other biomes have also like food security issues. So it is really important for us to kind of detach the Brazilian discussion also from the rainforest. But also, like coming back to the rainforest, we do have a risk of savanization. So it's also an issue of like, if we stop, like if we continue with deforestation rates, if we continue with not having restoration, it can come to a point that the rainforest is no longer a rainforest. And then we're back to the game to talk about desertification and land degradation. The other thing is just that we really need to look at degraded areas as an area that can be converted. So there are a lot of studies showing that Brazil can produce food without deforesting more, for example. And that requires working on degraded land and making them and transforming them into productive areas, so that we don't longer need to go to those other areas. And when I'm talking about like converting either to forests or like agroforestal systems and these kind of things, I'm also talking about restoring the soil and having like a richer soil and increasing food security. So I think it's important to find the ways to have those degraded lands back to the land use map. Okay. Instead of talking about like only deforestation and stuff.
I think a lot of people are saying, yes, we can do it, we can do it, we can do it. So why aren't we doing it? What's stopping it happening?
I think the whole issue of the financial mechanisms and the uncertainty. So we do have uncertainty with regard to how you're going to measure this. So the carbon credit has a lot of challenges, but it's one metric. Like you're measuring how much carbon you're removing and how much carbon you're avoiding the emission. So it's a way to go, but that's again, like when you go back to Brazil, there are few projects that are not located in the Amazon. Like if you go to Caatinga, which is like our most like dried area and land that's in all the maps of desertification, there are few projects of carbon credits there because you still don't have like that much carbon, a lot of science on this. So I think that's a lot of issues with finance, and also like the awareness issue is very important.
Okay, thank you very much indeed. Dr. Thamarakudi, I'm going to come to you next. Now, obviously, you have a very fascinating background, very rich background, all to the benefit of all of us, of course. You've worked with disasters and conflicts and land restoration. You are currently on the legal and institutional relations side of things within the UNCCD. So in terms of land degradation and drought, what are the legal elements that you are having to grapple with?
Thank you. I'll probably start off by one of the previous questions you asked, which is about the awareness about the UN Convention to Combat Desertification. So before I joined UNCCD, I used to work for 20 years in UNEP. And before that, I used to work for 10 years for Shell, the oil company. And both had brands which were globally recognized. Almost, when I got the job, I told my friends, they all knew. And when I got the job in UNCCD and I started telling my friends, they had no idea what is this, UNCCD. So I started telling, I'm in UN in Bonn, but luckily I was attached to a G20 project. And exactly that year, India became the president of the G20. So I was sort of saved by attaching myself to the G20 brand than the UNCCD brand. Now, I thought this is only because we are talking about people who are not in the UN. But last year, we had a meeting in Bonn where we had UN staff members from around the world coming together, and we were talking about something. And they asked, how many of you know about UNCCD? And 90% of the people inside the UN system, they did not know about UNCCD. So clearly, we have a brand problem, something which you have to work on. But coming to the institutional question you asked. So the G20 Global Land Initiative, which was initiated during the Saudi Arabian presidency of the G20, mandated a 50% reduction in land degradation by 2040, which, as Dr. Sama mentioned, would have come to something like 1 billion hectares to be restored. Exactly in 2020, there is a study by the Dutch Environmental Agency as to how much commitment has countries actually made for land restoration. That turns out to be 1 billion as well. So when I got this job, I thought I have it easy because 1 billion has to be restored, 1 billion has to be committed. All that I have to do is to just keep monitoring. It will happen automatically. But then came the latest report from UNCCD, which says that between 2015 and 2019, on an average, 100 million hectares is further being degraded. So the achievement which we have to make by 2040 will become from 1 billion hectares to 1.5 billion hectares. Now, why is that? In spite of the fact that the countries have committed to restore 1 billion hectares, it's not happening. That is the question which we are grappling. And the number one reason is that while countries have made commitment internationally, there is no corresponding national legislation for land restoration. If the game has to shift, the national legislation has to kick in. When the national legislation kick in, it will have two impacts. One is that the national finance mechanism will be unlocked. Number two, citizens in the country will be able to take their government to task because that law is not implemented. Now there's something good happening. The European Union started negotiating a land restoration law. And most people expected that this will actually fail. And it went through a lot of head-on between the agricultural lobby and the environmental lobby. But luckily, the law survived. Once the environmental law the restoration law in Europe kicks in, suddenly we have more than 24 countries which have national legislation on land restoration. And that will start to shift the game. And I'll make one final point. Now we want to take this national legislation globally. So our theory of change is that when we shift the national legislation at least 100 countries, then suddenly you will start to see changes. So last summer, we had members of parliament from 25 different countries across the world coming together, and we had master classes for them to discuss land restoration. So clearly, legislation and institution is our primary tool of intervention to shift the needle in land restoration.
What did you teach them?
Very interesting. First of all, they did not know that land is such an interesting issue. For example, first of all, we taught about UNCCD. We are also here. That big building out there is UNFCCC, I don't know, 15 floors high. And these 3 floors of this building is UNCCD, but we also exist. So that's number one. So they had awareness. But then they said we were never trained by anybody because everyone assumed that members of parliament know everything. And said, we are very happy. We actually took them into the field. So Germany has, and not many people know this, as an active coal mining industry still. So we took them to the coal mining industry, where there are conflict between the community and the mining, etc. But they're also very active restoration. We actually showed them how land is being restored, how this 30 centimeter topsoil is harvested, kept apart, how the mining industry is actually going to the sweet potato industry, washing centers, and buying in the soil which is stuck onto the sweet potato so that they can reuse it, and how carefully they are restoring this. Then we had master classes from the former president of Costa Rica, who said how, by following green policies, the GDP can be increased. We had lecture from Dr. Shashi Tharoor, who worked both in the UN as well as in the national parliament, as to how we can use parliament as a tool to change focus on land restoration, including on mining. So yes, it was a very rich program.
Okay, thank you very much indeed, Doctor. I'm going to come back to you, Your Excellency Faqiha. Saudi Arabia, we're in the UAE. Many people have asked that question about, well, basically, it's so hot. I mean, the land. I've been looking, for example, as I've been walking around, and I'm studying the plants, and I'm thinking, why haven't we got mulch around these plants? Very simple things. But in terms of Saudi Arabia, what sort of things does Saudi Arabia do to protect its land?
Yes, it's very hot and arid. It's very challenging. We are working on 2 fronts. First, to prevent degradation as much. So, for example, first of all, despite the arid climate, believe it or not, we have more than 2,000 types of flora in Arabia. Because Saudi Arabia location is between Africa, Europe, and Asia. And through migratory birds, winds, and other animals, they bring the seeds, and the seeds lands in the land. We have also mountain, and we have humid coastline, and we have internal valleys. So there was a variety of topography and others. So many of those plants found a suitable conditions to thrive. So now currently we have approximately 2,300 species of flora between trees and bushes and other types. So there is the flora that has adapted. We actually halted illegal logging because before we had a massive illegal logging, and it's detrimental because we have few trees. So a tree is a whole ecosystem supporting insects, birds, and also microbes at the roots. So it's very valuable. So we really halted that and encouraged alternatives for that. Also, we are working to organize grazing because, overgrazing is detrimental, not only Saudi Arabia, but many countries. Of course, this is amplified by the harsh conditions. On the restoration part, we are leveraging, natural resources like we have long coastlines, or we are replanting mangroves, which really very important for marine and doesn't need irrigation because it can thrive on saline water. We have actually about 1,000 kilometers of mountain range that is about 1,000 to 3,000 meters high. These had mountain terraces hundreds of years old that has been deserted. We actually partnered with thousands of local communities to refarm that. And believe it or not, you know, the farmer tell us, you know, we had wells here that are dry for decades after we implemented water harvesting. Now the rain is being captured. We are supporting farming and the wells are back. So we are also using wastewater, treated wastewater, use tertiary treatment and use it for irrigation. And now we are actually, I can show you now oases in the desert that we made from treated wastewater, and we have many of them now. So we are trying to leverage natural resources or other renewable resources that are there. We are leveraging local flora species that already adapted to hard weather. They can survive in hot temperatures with very little water, and they can survive. And we are also leveraging some protective areas. Awareness is very important. We are engaging local communities. We used to have, actually, we call them green leagues, which is locals who come together to protect land. And when we started, we had 4 or 5 in the kingdom. Now we have more than 200 of those. NGOs, environmental NGOs, when we started, we had about 2 or 3. Now about 50 now. So we are really partnering with them. The private sector, 50% of our greening is done through the private sector. Because many of the private sector comes and ask for land to build poultry farms and others. So they take lands from the government. So we tell them, okay, we will give you the land, but you have to plant trees on retain. So I think I go back to Mariana. We have to find a model where the business is engaged. And I think the only way, they will not be engaged in restoration. They will be engaged in the mainstream business and link it to it. So you want the land to do mining or to do other things, yes, commit to restoration. Make a commitment, because you will financially benefit, and that's okay, and we need it. But you need to give back through your corporate social responsibilities, to your actions, your ESG targets. So I think we need to involve the private sector. As I told you, now we are in phase 1 of the Saudi initiative. 50% of the commitments are coming from the private sector.
Just on that, sorry, Excellency, just on that point about the private sector, and you have to meet halfway with your responsibilities to the climate. How do they normally respond to something like that?
Of course, as Morale, there is the lack of awareness. We took land for granted. We took land that this is there. We don't realize that it has limitation. You have to preserve this 30 centimeter. It is not infinite. It can be lost. It can be degraded. They have to realize it's not like this. It's not really invincible, or no. It is vulnerable. We can lose it. The area could be there, but the productivity will be lost. It's no longer there. So I think we have to engage the businesses. There is some corporate social responsibility, but we have to link it to some kind of relations. Policy is very important. We put a policy for illegal logging. We are putting policy to organize grazing. So policy is very important at a local level. We could not do anything without our leadership commitment. So that the national leadership commitment to land restoration is detrimental. Without it, when they are committed, they can mobilize also the business and the financial institutions. I think legal frameworks is very important, and what the Ivory Coast is doing is wonderful. We need that, but we need to complete the equation by involving the private sector and the financial institution, and find a way to mainstream it.
Your Excellency, thank you very much. I'm going to open up the floor very quickly because we've only got Ms. Barbosa for a matter of minutes before she has to leave us. Are there any questions that anybody would like to pose at the moment? Yes, of course. Microphone's coming. There we go. Could we start with your name and organisation, please?
Yes, good afternoon, first of all, everyone. I am Hamad. I'm just here from Abu Dhabi University. My question is from His Highness Dr. Usama. We are really excited to hear about another important COP coming up in the region. So what are the opportunities for the young people to participate and contribute to the COP16?
Thank you, because really the youth and women and other members of the community are very important, and we have events for the youth. And we would like the youth to come because it's your future. The land degradation, we will not suffer, me and Dr. Morale, I don't think we will be around in 2050. I wish him long live. But it's you who are gonna pay the price of what we do. So you really will have to watch us very carefully, because otherwise we're gonna give you something very bad. So the youth has to talk and really hold us accountable, that keep environment safe for us so that we can enjoy what we are enjoying. Now we are enjoying ecosystem services, but we are ruining it. We are the adult who are controlling companies and governments. We need to be held accountable. And we need to report to you as the young generation of what we are doing and how we're conserving. So really, youth has to talk and has to be involved, because this is what you're gonna manage. And if we give you something poor to manage, that will make your life harder. So it's better to preserve. And I said, Dr. Morali said the commitment was to really restore 1 billion out of the 2 billion degraded. And now he's saying now we already degraded 500 million already. And I tell him the bad news, we are heading for 5 billion degraded land. So the message is better to preserve and manage the land sustainably, rather than poorly manage it, degrade it, and then spend an arm and a leg literally to restore it. So I think, yes, we are inviting youth organizations, we are inviting academia, university, and others, NGOs, women organizations also. We are working with the United Nations. I was just meeting UNDP, and we are engaging all those entities to be part of COP16, because it's not only Saudi Arabia and Ivory Coast as presidencies. We will do our best to create the venue, but it's really the content making is the stakeholders who come to Saudi Arabia. We will make everything possible logistically, but the outcome is determined by those who come to the COP and determine whether it's policymakers, business leaders, women, youth, NGOs. Those are the ones who are going to make the difference, and not only the presidency.
Thank you very much. Ms. Barbosa, thank you very much for your participation today. Safe travels onwards. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you. Hamad, it is Hamad? Hamad, I want to ask you a quick question. We heard His Excellency say you need to make us accountable. Do you know how to go about that?
Sorry?
Would you know how to go about that?
Yes, I just only have one more thing to know. Like, as you said, you will gonna invite universities. So it will be like from all over the world, or only related to Saudi Arabia?
No, it's a global. COP is global. 196 or 198 countries and hundreds of organizations. It's global. As a number of my colleagues mentioned, UNCCD COP is the third COP, in addition to climate and biodiversity. And we are not having the engagement, to be honest with you, at the level of the importance of the issue. So it's global, everybody will be invited. And I think you have to ask your colleagues in the university, do you know about land degradation? You should talk to maybe, ask, do the government, your government have a policy on land degradation. I think these questions, are our businesses, local businesses, aware? What do? Are they degrading land? Are they conserving land? Do they have internal corporate policies of how to deal with the land when they come and exploit it? And I think this is the kind of questions you should be asking.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. Thank you. Monsieur Francois, in terms of the stakeholders, what experience did Ivory Coast have as presidency of the UNCCD in terms of bringing on new stakeholders, and what worked and what didn't?
Thank you. Regarding the stakeholders, I think we managed as a presidency to bring all the major ones, at the table. And for instance, like I just, I don't know if I mentioned that, but the presidency signed almost 12 MOUs with the private sector just to bring more awareness, and also not only awareness but involvement in restoring lands. For instance, we've signed MOUs with companies to do more reforestation. How do you say? Yes, reforestation. And we also work with the youth, of course. Like I told you, we're still working with the youth on the desertification fresk. The objective on the desertification fresk is to have at least one ambassador per country, per member state countries of the convention. And that's another example of involvement with the youth. Regarding the women, it's the same. Like I said, on the desertification fresk, which is our major project right now, we have more women than men engaged in that project, so as ambassadors. Again, yeah, I think we have all stakeholders. On the financial side also, we're trying to do our best with the Great Green Wall, for instance. Mr. Donvaye was at the ministerial meeting in Abuja, in Nigeria, a few weeks ago, ministerial meeting on the Great Green Wall, to raise awareness again, to bring financial institutions together, and with more investment on the Great Green Wall. But you also have projects like the Hydra, which is the International Drought Resilience Alliance, also where we are committed. You have the MGI also, Côte d'Ivoire is involved in that. And yes, I think with the stakeholders, we're doing a great job right now. And the best example of that is, like I said, the project we are following up and we are implementing right now as a presidency.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Tamara Kudi, in terms of the commitments, I was speaking to somebody earlier and they said, we're doing absolutely fine on commitments. We just heard about the MOUs, we've heard about the pledges, et cetera, but we're actually very poor on action, and time is running out when it comes to drought. So when you are carrying out your coordination work, what is the biggest challenge that you face? Because a lot of the public don't understand why they're not seeing more action. So moving it forward, what can be done? What should be done?
Now, when we look at the country commitment, as I mentioned, there are 115 countries are committed between themselves. They're committed to 1 billion hectares. Now, we did a very rough back of the envelope calculation. How much would it cost to restore that land? If you have to take a very low end of the spectrum of cost of restoration, about $1,000 to $1,500 per hectare for restoration, that translates to $1 to $1.5 trillion for restoration. Now you look at the conventional flow going into land restoration is nowhere near that. Now, when we talk about land restoration, we often talk about climate finance. You look at the entire range of climate finance, that doesn't come to this, but only less than 5% of that is actually going to nature-based solution. So clearly, it's not going to come from the climate finance angle. It's not going to the biodiversity finance. What is prescribed is $30 billion, and that has many commitments. And even if you take one third of that, that again is not going to make $1 trillion. So that $1 trillion will have to come from private investment. And that private investment will come when land restoration is not a net negative activity. It has to be net positive. How can we do that? So one thing which we are currently thinking, and we are building it from the oil industry background, which I have, is to look at these 2 billion hectares which has been degraded and create a restoration prospect map globally using artificial intelligence and finding that certain part of the world, land restoration will be net negative. Clearly, public finance will have to go there. But there may be part of the world where land restoration can be economically positive. For example, the agricultural land, if you improve agricultural land, it increases productivity, and therefore that can pay for itself. If you go to urban wetland, restore urban wetland, it will increase property values around, it can be profitable. If you go to degraded mining, the mining industry has already made money, and therefore they can pay back for restoration. So there could be 300 to 400 million hectares of land. But where is that land? Identifying using AI modeling where there can be net positive return from restoration. And then bringing in the private sector actors to do the restoration. So we are dreaming of creating an entirely new restoration industry. On one side, giving them intelligence, on the other side, showing them the financial pathways. This is the dream we have.
Thank you very much indeed. Right, to the floor. Do we have any questions, please? Yes, lady at the back. Oh, are you sure? Yes, sir. I wonder if we could just, the microphone is behind you. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. My name is Stephen Moe from Uganda. I really want to thank the panelists, His Excellency, and G20 initiative, and the COP15 representative. I just want to say that really the key words that I've had is more awareness, more commitment, and also reversing the degradation, which is now possibly heading to 5 billion, and we must get this done. I think the opportunity we have is COP16, and my question is, how do we plan to make COP16 a real turnaround? How do we expect Saudi Arabia, which is the host, to really play its role and get a meaningful outcome, to greater awareness, to greater commitment, and also political commitment and high-level involvement? This is critical to achieve what we have been able to talk about here. And so I would really want to learn what are the strategies for the G20 to support this effort, the government of Saudi Arabia, what are your strategies? And I've had the stakeholder involvement, which you are appealing for. How can we make this a reality? Really, this is something that I would be interested to know. Thank you.
Stephen, thank you very much. So, Dr. Fakui, I think they're expressing what a lot of the world is also reflecting. Yes. That is frustration.
I think there are two pathways. What Saudi Arabia is doing and what the rest of the world should be doing. I mean, from now until December. Our strategy, we are working very closely with UNCCD, with the Land Initiative, with those entities who are really closer to the issue, with the United Nations organizations, to really raise the awareness. We are here today as part of our, we are leveraging the Climate Cup, because the Climate Cup, we know it's a big crowd, there is a lot of awareness about the climate, that there is interconnectivity between land and climate change. So we are leveraging this opportunity to come here and address the audience to raise the awareness about the land degradation issue. We are engaging the business community, financial community. We have a plan now with World Economic Forum to have an event on land degradation and have an audience of the business and the financial community and the policy holders. So we have, I was in Samarkand, and I think Mr. Ibrahim, 2 weeks ago with the, the CRIC, the committee that follow on the implementation of COP15, where we engaged many stakeholders. So I think our strategy is engagement, engagement, engagement. Engaging, media, engaging bilateral meetings and multilateral organizations, the business community, the NGOs. So we will continue engage from now until December. But one country can do that much. And also our strategy is to really attract as much as possible from the stakeholders to be there, from all the stakeholders, the international organizations, the scientific community, the business community, women and the youth, as we talked, the academia, to be there, the policymakers. Of course, there is the formal negotiation track that will be there. But together with that, also we're trying to get everybody there. But I think everybody, international organizations, academia, member of the government, I think you in Uganda, your job is to go back and propagate the message to Ugandan officials who would like Uganda to have a strong presence in COP16 and be part of the solution, having a pavilion showcasing the challenges or the good stories that you want to share or yours. And I think everybody should be engaged. The success of COP16 is not based on Saudi Arabia alone. It's really the whole world, everybody. I think we and UNCCD doing as much as we can, but no matter what we do, it will never be a success without everybody's engagement.
Thank you very much. Dr. Tumurakudi?
I once heard that one of the best out-of-the-box idea is to look inside the box and implement what has already been committed. I think as we think of COP16 and how do we reach there, we should do an honest stock take of the previous COPs and also other initiatives happening globally. Before we go into a commitment, what is that we have committed in the past and what has worked and what has not worked? And I'm sure there are a lot of examples of things worked. And we should work on that on almost like an appreciative inquiry basis. That if something is working, then do more of it. And something is not working, try to find out it is likely to work, because there's no point in keeping on committing when it's unlikely to be implemented. So doing a honest stock taking, I think, is very important. Number two, bringing the private sector angle in a big way is important, because COP is mainly seen as the governments talking to government. But this time, for the first time, I understand in this COP, for example, the number of people in the industry has grown absolutely dramatically here, especially from the fossil fuel. There's a BBC article on that. Now, where is the restoration industry? Where is the industry which underpins land restoration? Is it the agricultural industry? Is it the mining industry? Is it the urban land use industry? So we have to either define or design that restoration industry and get those people to come into the COP and show them the huge opportunity of this trillion-dollar economy emerging. And then they will unleash the private sector creativity to achieve the targets.
Thank you very much, Doctor. Thank you. Hamad, there was something here that I started to talk to you about it, and then we continued along another path. But as the doctor was saying there, an inquiry, I asked you earlier, do you know how to hold those in power within climate change to account? The good doctor at the end said, you have to hold us accountable. Do you know how you would do that? Could we have the microphone, please?
So to be honest, this is first experience, like visiting. So basically, First of all, I would like to thank the government of UAE. They have took this initiative to engage the youth, to invite students from all over the universities, so that we can know. And if you want me to be honest, before that, we are not aware of the things that we are doing about the land restoration and happening all of that. But being here, attending events, exploring stuff from the last 7 days, I came to know a lot. And that's why the reason that I asked the question from His Highness Dr. Osama, that from now on ahead, what would we can do more to know more about that? Because as if he's thinking about us, so there would be we should also have to take the initiative to go through that, and then we have to pass this to next generation as well.
Right. Could I suggest something?
Yes.
Why don't you get together with your colleagues and suggest that at future COPs, you hold something that very much like the doctor said, and you have a COP inquiry where you look at what was put down as a pledge and how far they've come along with that pledge. Have a think about that. You know, go back to universities and your colleagues and say, listen, how can we do that? Like a youth court for climate change.
This is what, this is what I was thinking of as
I'm going to, just before we end, ladies and gentlemen, I know it's just past lunchtime, but I just want 3 people, please. The lady at the end with the glasses, I'm going to choose, I need a gentleman. Hamad, could you sit down for me? Just like, the gentleman with the blonde hair there. And I need one more person at the back. It's always the people at the back, isn't it? Could I have you, madam, as well? The madam, yes. What I'm going to ask is, and we'll start with you, your country, please, and your knowledge of a land degradation issue within your country. Stand up, please. Yeah. There we go.
Hi, everyone. Sorry about that. My name is Priyanka Tilak. I am originally from Mauritius, which is a tropical island experiencing high degrees of sea level rise. I think that would be the most pertinent issue for them in terms of land degradation. But I think the awareness is raising slowly in terms of implementing initiatives mentioned by one of the panelists in terms of mangrove restoration, having more community-level engagement and determining what are the main issues and priorities for the communities in terms of building that sustainable sort of development. So I think it's slowly growing, and I think one issue that for us we would like to see more of is the engagement of women and girls in terms of being consulted meaningfully and fully for what are their main priorities within these initiatives to make sure that they're not left behind and their needs are not ignored.
Thank you very much. And do women have equal land rights in Mauritius?
In terms of land tenure, not completely, but we're getting there.
Thank you very much. To the gentleman with the blonde hair, please.
Hello, I just popped in.
You weren't expecting this.
No problem. I'm from Lithuania, somewhere in the Baltic states. Maybe one fact that, we are a country of rain. We have plenty of that, but around 80% of our land is facing desertification. And, the organic matter is less than, 1 or 2%, which is sad. So that's enough.
Do they have measures in place to try and protect the land from being destroyed and degraded?
Probably, but it's definitely not working.
Okay, thank you very much. And we will get one more. I'm going to choose you at the back. Yes, if we could just pass the microphone. Your country, please, and a land issue, a land degradation issue.
I'm from India, and I've been living in the UAE for the past 18 years. So basically, I think that the one major land degradation issue that people face is basically with respect to the farmers. I would say that farmers are facing a lot of issue in growing crops. So because India is majorly an agricultural country, I think that's where we should focus on with respect to land degradation, to make sure that farmers do have land to grow food.
Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody. Thank you for your time. And thank you very much to our panel. Thank you, Dr. Osama Fakir, Monsieur Curtis Jean-François, and Dr. Murali Tabarakudi. Thank you. Thank you.